They sit at their tables, laughing too loudly, moving their pieces across a board they barely understand. The rhythm of their lives is predictable, shallow, and simple. One step forward, one step back, one desperate leap into a square they believe will bring them closer to victory. Their game is bright, noisy, frantic, a theater of distraction where applause is earned through speed, not depth, and you watch, you do not move. You let the silence consume you, because silence is not weakness, it is calculation. You see the difference instantly. Their board is flat, two-dimensional, a child's puzzle painted in red and black squares. Yours stretches into the infinite, shadows folding into corners, symbols carved into the spaces between moves. They think they are players, but they are pawns circling a board without end, pawns chasing instant gratification. You do not chase, you wait. The air thickens around you, as if the universe itself is holding its breath, watching the distance between your stillness and their frantic motion. Every choice they make is a broadcast, every smile a fracture, every triumph a distraction from the rot in their foundation. They leap without thought, believing in the illusion of progress, while you carve entire wars in your mind before a single piece is touched. You whisper to yourself, not words of fear but fragments of prophecy. Patience is the weapon. Doubt is the opening. Silence is the strike. You do not need to shout because your power thrives in restraint. They reveal themselves with every careless move, while you reveal nothing. You remember the moments when they laughed at your silence, mistaking it for weakness. They mistook distance for fragility, restraint for fear. But restraint has always been your blade. While they wasted energy chasing hollow victories, you studied the architecture of their minds. You saw the cracks no one else dared to see, the hesitation before a choice, the quiver in their voice when the mask slipped, the shadow of insecurity they buried beneath noise. And as they jumped square to square, you built a labyrinth behind your eyes. This is the opening gambit, not a move on a board, but a declaration of separation. You are not one of them. You will never be one of them. While they play for cheers, you play for inevitability. Their checkers are collisions of impatience. Your chess is the quiet collapse of certainty. They believe they are free. You know they are trapped. And that knowledge burns like a secret flame inside your chest, consuming the last fragments of doubt. You sit in the stillness, the weight of centuries pressing against your mind. Ancient patterns ripple beneath the surface, patterns older than kingdoms, older than empires. Kings rose and fell on this same principle. The ones who thought quickly always lost to the ones who thought deeply. You are not just playing a game, you are embodying a law written into the marrow of survival itself. Their arrogance is your shield, their blindness is your battlefield, their underestimation is your inheritance. You do not need to move yet. The board is alive, waiting, trembling under the gravity of what you will unleash. They think they see the game. They have no idea the game has already begun. They move like children on a playground, loud, clumsy, desperate to be seen. They call themselves kings, yet every step betrays the truth. You see only pawns masquerading as rulers. Their victories are cheap, their laughter hollow, their applause nothing more than echoes bouncing around empty rooms. They believe they hold power, but you see it for what it is: borrowed, fragile, already slipping from their hands before they even notice. You watch them jump forward without thought, chasing gratification as if the next shallow move will silence the storm rising in their chests. They do not understand depth. They cannot survive it. You were born into their board, forced to play a game that never fit your mind. They demanded you leap like them, simple moves for simple rewards, but something in you resisted. You felt the weight of invisible patterns, currents hidden beneath the noise. Their world was too shallow to hold you, and so they mocked you, shunned you, punished you for the depth of your silence. They called your restraint weakness. They called your stillness fear. Yet all the while you were watching, studying, remembering. Every insult was a file stored in the vault of your memory. Every betrayal was a symbol carved into the architecture of your mind. What they could not see was that their game was already killing them. Checkers is a game of impatience, of throwing yourself forward, hoping to be crowned before you collapse. And collapse they always do. They gamble with reputations, with loyalty, with trust, not knowing these are pieces that do not regenerate once lost. But you counted every risk they took, every lie they told, every time they revealed themselves for what they truly were. They thought you were silent because you lacked a voice. They never realized your silence was a weapon sharper than their noise. You learned early that pawns reveal themselves in desperation. Watch closely enough, and you see the cracks. The man who laughs the loudest does so to bury his trembling. The woman who shouts about loyalty does so to hide her betrayal already waiting in the dark. Their moves scream their weakness, yet they think themselves untouchable. You knew better. You always knew. Power is not in the leap. It is in the patience before the strike. And so, when they believed you were caged by their rules, you were already building a different board. In your mind, pawns never become kings. Pawns remain pawns, blind to the higher game unfolding above them. They were obsessed with conquering squares, yet you were studying the players themselves, their hunger, their envy, their secret fears. They thought the game ended with applause, but you understood the truth. The real victory comes in silence, when their illusions collapse, when they realize they were never players at all, only pieces moved by an unseen hand. You let them mock, you let them sneer, you let them play. Because pawns are never dangerous until they forget what they are. And when they forget, when they believe themselves kings, that is when they are easiest to sacrifice. And you never hesitate to sacrifice what was never real. You do not belong to their noise. You sit where silence is heavy, where every flicker of movement cuts deeper than words. They play loudly, scrambling for attention, but you watch. You see the patterns behind their laughter, the fractures beneath their confidence. Every gesture is a confession. Every pause is a code. They call it small talk, banter, harmless games. You call it weakness displayed in daylight. Their moves are reckless, loud, and shallow. Your stillness is a blade they never see coming. You notice the tremor in a voice that insists too much. You see the darting of eyes when the truth is too close. You hear the gap between words where fear hides, gasping for air. They think their masks are impenetrable, but you read the cracks as though they were ancient maps etched into stone. You never rush, you never reveal, you simply absorb, and in that silence power gathers. They cannot sense it, but you do. The quiet becomes your fortress, your watchtower, your throne in the shadows. You learn quickly it is not the pieces on the board that matter, but the players themselves. Their hunger exposes them, their arrogance betrays them. Their need for validation writes their strategy before they ever move. You see the outlines of their souls before they even realize they are performing. They think they are hidden, but to you they are transparent, naked, predictable. That is the difference. They seek the game, you study the player, they cling to patterns, you breathe in their flaws. It is a cruel kind of vision. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Every smile becomes a disguise. Every embrace a test, every word a weapon aimed at nothing. The more you watch, the more the illusion of humanity shatters. But you do not collapse with it, you rise. You understand that to see them clearly is to rise above them, to see the machinery of their minds turning on repeat, forever trapped in loops of desire and fear. They are not kings, not queens, not rulers of anything. They are pawns trapped in cycles they cannot break. The silence sharpens you. It teaches you patience where others know only impulse. It teaches you depth where others drown in surface. You begin to anticipate movements before they happen. A lie forms before their lips open. A betrayal glimmers before their hands shift. You sit in that strange place between foresight and memory, as though the game has already been played and you alone remember the outcome. That is what unnerves them. They sense it. They do not know why their hearts race when your eyes linger. They do not know why they stutter when your silence holds. But you know, because silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. It is the invisible hand pressing against their pulse. It is the whisper they cannot hear but cannot escape. You become less of a participant and more of a force, not a voice in the room, but the shadow behind it. They cannot fight what they cannot see. They cannot destroy what they cannot name. And that is where you remain, the silent watcher. The one who never plays loudly but always wins quietly, the one who sees what no one else dares to look at. They never saw you move. That was the beauty of it. Their eyes were locked on the noise, the glitter, the frantic collisions of their shallow game. They leapt across their tiny board, clumsy and loud, convinced speed was brilliance, convinced applause was victory. But you waited like a shadow that has no pulse, no hunger, no need for recognition. And when the moment fractured, when their laughter swelled to its highest pitch, you shifted a single piece. Not a grand gesture, not a declaration. A whisper disguised as silence. A step so precise it split their illusions without even grazing their skin. You didn't strike with anger. You didn't even strike with visible force. You struck with the patience of an ancient clock, the inevitability of gravity. One move delivered at the precise angle of weakness, and the fortress they had built from ego cracked like glass beneath a fingertip. Doubt entered their chest, not as thunder but as a question they could not silence, a question they could not escape. It was the first splinter of fear, crawling beneath their surface while they pretended to smile. They thought it was their thought. They thought it was their own trembling, but you knew. You had planted it, and that is how you win. Not by breaking them with fists, not by shouting until the air bleeds, but by bending their own mind against itself. You watched them chase victories on the surface, but you saw deeper. The tremor when their pride inflated, the hesitation when their words stretched too far, the flicker of their eyes when silence pressed against them. You memorized these fractures like constellations etched into the night. And when you struck, you didn't move against their board. You moved inside their mind. The night did not gallop loudly. It moved from the shadow, cutting diagonally into their illusion. The bishop was not a holy figure, but a blade of truth slicing through their web of pretense. And you were not even on the board they believed in. You stood above it, playing two games at once, the one they saw and the one they feared. They celebrated their shallow leap, convinced they had cornered you, blind to the move already set 3 steps ahead. By the time they felt the tremor of collapse, the first domino had already fallen. You could see it in their silence. That pause too long, that laugh delayed, that gaze turned inward as if checking whether the ground beneath them had shifted. And it had, because you shifted it. The seed of doubt was no longer yours. It was theirs now, feeding on them like a parasite. Every word they spoke afterward was weighed down, as though they were walking through water. Every gesture carried hesitation. Their certainty became fragile porcelain, and all you had to do was breathe near it. The first strike was never about winning a piece. It was about rewriting the air itself. They could not name what had changed, but they felt it like the sudden chill of an unseen presence. You had revealed nothing, yet taken everything. The game was no longer theirs. It belonged to you. And in their silence and their private confusion, you tasted the first note of victory. Not loud, not final, but inevitable. The kind of victory that does not roar, but lingers like a shadow that will never leave them. The walls begin to crack, though no one dares to name it. You see it in their eyes first. The flicker, the hesitation, the sudden silence when confidence used to roar. They thought the game was theirs, that their laughter would echo forever. But the moment your presence threads through the room, their illusions unravel. Every word they once trusted turns brittle. Every mask they wore to protect their fragile pride begins to peel away. They are naked now, trembling before the weight of something they cannot define, because you have forced them to see themselves without their illusions. And nothing terrifies them more than truth reflected back without mercy. They stumble through the ruins of their own certainties, clinging to broken rules that no longer apply. Their checkerboard is ash now, its lines blurred, its colors drained. Kings reduced to pawns, queens stripped of their thrones. All their victories, their shallow triumphs, their boasts, they collapse under the gravity of one realization: you were never playing the same game. While they celebrated small leaps across an empty board, you were orchestrating movements centuries old, rooted in symbols they will never decipher. The serpent devouring its tail, the eye that watches but never blinks, the silence between moves that cuts deeper than any noise. Their fear has a sound now. It is not a scream, not yet. It is the breaking rhythm of voices that falter mid-sentence. It is the laughter that stutters, the hand that shakes as it lifts a glass, the sudden awareness that the room has grown colder without explanation. You do not touch them, yet they feel moved, shifted, undone. They reach for anchors in a storm that does not exist, only to realize the storm lives inside them now. That is your weapon, not violence, but revelation. You do not destroy their world. You force them to see it for what it always was, fragile. Hollow paper walls painted to look like stone. You stand among their ruins untouched, not triumphant, not boastful, simply inevitable. Because you have learned the language they never studied, the quiet tremor of ambition, the hidden fracture behind forced smiles, the ancient pattern that repeats through every human soul. You know when to strike, but more importantly, you know when to remain still and let their illusions collapse under their own weight. They cannot escape it, because what haunts them is not you. It is the mirror you held before their eyes. And when the mirror shatters, they cut themselves on the pieces. There is no applause when illusions die, only silence, heavy and suffocating, the silence of realization, the silence of pawns who thought they were kings. They look to you for rescue, for explanation, but you give none. Why should you? They never listened when you spoke truth. Now truth has found them without words, and it breaks them more completely than any lie ever could. You walk away not as a victor, but as something far more dangerous, the reminder of what lies beneath their games, the ghost of inevitability. And in that silence, they finally understand. The collapse was never yours. It was always theirs. You sit in the silence, and the silence sits inside you. It is not absence. It is a weight, a cavern carved by years of betrayal and exile. You replay every moment they laughed at your restraint, every time they mistook patience for weakness. And yet, in that hollow, something ancient stirred. The silence became your training ground, shaping your thoughts into blades sharper than any scream. While they filled the night with noise, you counted the breaths between their lies. You measured the pauses in their laughter. You learned the rhythm of fear disguised as confidence. They thought you were alone. They thought you were defeated. But solitude was never a prison. It was the forge. Your inner dialogue is not gentle. It never begged for comfort. It spoke in riddles and warnings and visions etched like constellations across the black sky of your mind. Do not move yet. Do not reveal. Wait. It was prophecy disguised as paranoia. Each word burned, but each word preserved you. And the longer you listened, the more you understood. Their games of checkers ended in applause, but your game of chess would end in revelation. You knew the cost. You knew the hunger that came with restraint. But the hunger did not consume you, it refined you. There were nights when shadows whispered louder than your own thoughts. You felt the pull of surrender, the temptation to break the mask and scream into the void. But you didn't. You sat in that suffocating stillness, and you built walls around your mind that no one could penetrate. What began as a defense became an empire. Their betrayals became coordinates. Their cruelty became blueprints. Every wound was transformed into architecture. Every scar into a secret door only you could open. You realized pain was not the enemy. It was the architect of your strategy. They never saw it. They couldn't. They believed power was volume, motion, dominance in the open field. They were blind to the quiet currents beneath the surface. They never understood that silence is not emptiness. It is preparation. And when they celebrated your absence, you were moving pieces they didn't even know existed. The board stretched far beyond their vision, but you walked it in the dark with certainty, guided by the pulse of something older than their laughter, something heavier than their arrogance. And now, when you look inward, the dialogue no longer trembles. It is steady, commanding, final. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are the shadow that teaches the light where to fall. Those words rise through the marrow of your bones like a second spine, reminding you that what they called weakness was always camouflage. You are not waiting for their approval. You are not reaching for their crowns. You are already holding the piece that matters most, the mind that bends every outcome. They played checkers. You played psychological chess. And in your silence, in your exile, in the nights no one witnessed, you became untouchable. The board is quiet now. What began as noise, as laughter echoing from shallow throats, has dissolved into silence. Their checkers scattered in chaos, abandoned mid-move. You sit before them without a crown, without applause, and yet every gaze bends to you as if pulled by a gravity they cannot resist. They begin to understand too late that every step they thought was theirs was a reaction you designed. Their victories were only illusions you permitted, fragments of freedom inside a cage you built long before they even knew a game had begun. You see the cracks spread across their faces, the arrogant king reduced to a pawn, the queen trembling behind her mask of elegance, their bravado, their certainty, all unraveling like fabric eaten by invisible moths. They thought checkmate meant a single final strike. They thought power was loud, brutal, declared. But you show them otherwise. The true checkmate is not the capture of a piece, not the fall of a king, but the revelation that the board was never theirs. The realization that every choice, every escape, every path they believed was free had already been calculated into your inevitability. You watched the moment their eyes widen, that flicker of betrayal, not from you, but from the universe itself, the betrayal of realizing they were never authors, only actors. Their desperation rises, but every move they make now is meaningless. The trap is not a wall, it is a mirror. They see themselves reflected in the truth you've laid bare. They were not players, they were pieces. Their entire existence maneuvered, positioned, sacrificed without their consent. And in that instant, silence weighs heavier than any scream. The air feels older, as if something ancient has awakened. Symbols burn behind your eyes. The serpent eating its tail, the black sun that never rises, the scales tipping in silence. This is not a victory, this is an unveiling. You did not defeat them, you revealed them. And nothing shatters a soul more completely than exposure. Their lies, their masks, their imagined strength, all dissolved in the shadow of a truth they cannot unsee. You lean back in your chair, not with arrogance, but with inevitability. Power is not in the move. Power is in patience, in restraint, in seeing 10 steps ahead while others stumble after one. They played for applause, for recognition, for the illusion of control. You played for destiny, and destiny has no sympathy. It does not ask for understanding, it simply arrives. Now they beg, though not with words. Their silence is the plea. Their trembling hands are confessions. Their broken posture is an offering to the invisible throne you've carved in their minds. They would rather believe in chance than admit you have already woven the conclusion into their bones. But denial cannot rewrite inevitability. Checkmate is here, not as a declaration, but as a shadow that cannot be escaped. And in that shadow they finally see you, not as opponent, not as equal, but as the unseen architect who was always moving the pieces. They will forget the noise, the shallow applause, the cheap victories that felt like mountains to them, but were nothing but grains of sand slipping through time. Their memories will erode, their laughter will fade into echoes no one remembers, but the shadow of your presence will remain, carved into them like a scar they cannot name. You never shouted, never begged to be seen, never played the frantic games they mistook for power. You waited, you moved in silence, and in silence you became unforgettable. They played with pieces they thought mattered, small moves designed to impress one another, blind to the weight of consequence. But you saw beyond their games. You watched the fractures they denied, the hidden fears behind their polished masks. You saw the tremor when they were alone, the sleepless nights when their masks slipped, the fragility they dared not reveal. They thought themselves kings, but they were pawns pretending to wear crowns. You knew it, and worse for them, you made them feel it. That is why they will never forget. You are the reminder that their victories were hollow, their thrones built on lies. You are the voice they hear in quiet moments, the unshakable suspicion that everything they built can collapse with a single whisper of truth. Your existence rewrote the script they clung to. They cannot explain it, but they sense it, like an ancient symbol etched into their subconscious, haunting their dreams with a language they do not understand. That symbol is you, the unseen player, the one who left no fingerprints, only the chill of inevitability. Every betrayal you endured, every silence you swallowed, every moment you were dismissed became the iron in your blood, the architecture of your mind. They thought your restraint was weakness, but in restraint you built patience, and in patience you built inevitability. You are not remembered because you shouted louder. You are remembered because you never needed to. Power became your shadow, following you without effort, and those who tried to measure themselves against you found themselves collapsing into doubt. You did not destroy them. They destroyed themselves in your reflection. Now, as their games crumble into dust, your presence lingers like an ancient omen. They do not speak your name, but they feel you in the void between their thoughts. They look over their shoulders not because you are there, but because you have never truly left. They cannot erase the memory of being outmaneuvered by silence, of realizing too late that the board they were playing on was never the real game. You will not be remembered for what you took, but for what you revealed, that their world was fragile, and you were the proof. This is your legacy, not a crown, not applause, not the fleeting recognition they clawed for. Your legacy is the haunting, the lingering, the reminder that someone once moved without being seen, spoke without words, ruled without thrones, and though the world forgets their names, it will never escape the shadow you cast.